This is an Apple Power Mac G4 Cube from 2000, and it is perhaps the single most beautiful product that Apple ever released. Unfortunately, the previous owner said they stopped using this after it started randomly shutting off. Off. Not a good sign. So today, let's crack this thing open, do a little forensic investigation, and see if we can't bring it back to life. So stay tuned. And if you enjoy resurrecting weird and wonderful computers, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. A lot of interesting things happened in the year 2000. The global economy decided not to melt down, and when people wrote dates on things, it tended to look like this. Ah, crap. And Apple released a small, ambitious computer that nobody wanted. To put this cube into historical context, Steve Jobs had recently returned to Apple, and it seemed like he could do no wrong. In 1998, he brought us the iMac G3, which basically saved Apple from bankruptcy. And the Power Mac line was beloved by creative professionals. But neither of those two product lines were quite right for the luxury executive market. So the G4 Cube was developed, putting form as far ahead of function as possible, taking the raw power of the high-end G4 CPU and constraining it within a densely packed, silent, fanless, and very expensive 8-inch cube. Yeah, this thing started at $1,800, while the far more powerful and expandable Power Mac G4 Tower started at $1,600. And that was still a very beautiful machine. So pretty much everybody just bought the Tower. But I'm obsessed with these cubes, and whenever one pops up locally, I try and save it. So let's crack this thing open using its very unusual mechanism, and see if we can't figure out what's gone wrong. Right after this quick word about today's sponsor, Delete Me. Today's internet is a weird place. Everything you do and say online is analyzed, cataloged, chopped up, and sold on the open market of data brokers. And it's not just shady advertisers buying this data. Your private info can wind up in the hands of scammers, fraudsters, phishing schemes, and worse. Oh look, another political text. Delete. This is exactly the kind of thing that Delete Me can help to address. I've been using Delete Me for well over a year now, going on 2. And they help me control my personal information in ways I was never able to accomplish manually. They constantly scour the internet for my info and report back to me exactly which data brokers and websites have it. And then, well, they delete me. And there's a privacy advisor that I can reach out to at any time. Just look at my listings removed over time. A big spike at the beginning where they removed all the data that was just floating out there on me, and then a consistent removal of all the data that keeps popping back up. Get 20% off Delete Me consumer plans when you go to joindeleteme.com/actionretro and use promo code ActionRetro at checkout. Thanks again, Delete Me, for sponsoring today's video. So the way you get into the G4 Cube is actually pretty cool. You flip it upside down, and there is a handle inside you push down on. Look at that, pops up with a soft touch, and you can just lift the internal straight out. Yeah, even for being such a limited design as far as form over function goes, they still thought about expandability back in these days. Okay, so I have a bit of a suspicion about what might have gone wrong inside this cube, so I want to look for obvious signs of damage, and if we don't see any, then we'll turn it on and see if it indeed likes to randomly power off. But the most common culprit for that symptom is this board here, the VRM, or the voltage regulator. You see, the G4 Cube has a video card with an ADC connector. This connector provides power to the monitor. So the cube's power supply is powering both the computer and the monitor. And that can put quite a strain on these VRMs over the years. So we're going to pop this out, take a closer look, and see if we can find any scorch marks and replace any components if they have indeed fried. Luckily, it's pretty easy to get this out of here. This cable to disconnect from the bottom, and then one bracket here. So looking over this board with the old goof goggles, I didn't see anything too glaring, although it looks like capacitor C50 might be a little bit swollen. And it almost looks like C32 here was replaced in the past and kind of shoddily soldered back on. Could that have been from the factory? Who knows? So I guess let's just replace these two capacitors, and then we'll power the thing up and see if it does indeed shut off. All right, new capacitors are on. Had a little bit of a whoopsie with the pad, but nothing a little bodge wire can't fix. We'll just pretend that didn't happen. All right, back in the cube. Still fits even with our bodge. So in a killer feature that never took off, we're gonna plug this monitor into ADC, which provides both video and power over this single cable. We can plug it in just like so. And the cube's power supply is actually external in this big, weird, heavy brick. And that ADC cable also carries USB, which means we can connect our keyboard and mouse directly to the monitor instead of the cube. But the fun facts don't stop there. The cube doesn't have a power button, so to speak. This is more like a camera that detects light and dark. You touch it, that's not capacitive. That sensed the change in light to signal the machine to turn on. It's actually very annoying because you can accidentally trigger that thing all the time and shut the computer down. Well, apparently this thing lives. We have booted into... Oh, this was trying to run a server. Oh no. Glad I didn't plug this into the internet. What is this running? What in the world? Okay, according to this, we're running macOS 10.3.9, but instead of a 450 megahertz CPU, it's 1.2 gigahertz. This thing has a ridiculous upgrade in it that I was not expecting. We're discovering this together. And also, that might be a reason why the computer was shutting off intermittently. This thing famously does not have a fan, although I actually hear a fan running. But these CPUs put a lot of strain on the internals of the cube, both in heat and in power from that VRM. So I'm gonna let this run for a little bit and see if it wants to shut down. I just noticed this is called Death Cube. Someone with excellent taste. Oh yeah, there is a fan in there. Look at that. Blowing out air. Okay, so I've let this thing run for like 2 hours and there were no random shutdowns, so that's good. I think what we should do next is take this the rest of the way apart, check what accelerator is in there, and we should probably repaste it. Gross. And I do want to replace this hard drive as well. This thing is a big source of heat for the constraints of the cube, so sticking something like an SSD in there will be much cooler. I'm just going to go with this 64 gigabyte Dogfish SSD and one of these cheapo SATA to IDE adapters. That will be an order of magnitude better than a hard drive. Oh yeah, I can kind of see the purple of the CPU accelerator right there, which gets me extremely excited because purple generally means sonnet, and sonnet is my favorite kind of accelerator to collect. Unfortunately, to get to the CPU on this thing, we have to take everything off because it's mounted on the bottom of the motherboard, pressed up against the heatsink here. I have done this about 1 million times, and it's not that hard. Just a little bit fiddly. Oh, don't you just love 20-year-old plastics? Oh yeah, just look at this dainty little board. All the power of a Power Mac stuck into a tiny machine. Oh yeah, look at that. We do indeed have a Sonnet. Yeah, 1.2 gigahertz Sonnet, 2 megs of cache. I love to see these. Technically compatible with the towers, but this is a form factor, of course, to fit in the cube. Oh, I love everything about these. I love the purple PCB solder mask. I love the Sonnet logo with its delightfully 90s font. Oh, I'm so excited this random cube came with this beautiful upgrade. So let's add some thermal compound because there was barely anything left. Let's add exactly the correct amount of thermal compound. Yeah, that's way too much. Alright, I've got the cube back together enough to test it. The SSD is just dangling in there loosely, as is tradition. And adding to the hilarious limitations of the cube, there is no audio. There's no speaker, there's no audio jack out. The only way to get sound on a G4 cube is with a USB speaker. And in fact, that's what they provided you from the factory. Unfortunately, I don't have a set, but this will work. All right, let's see if the cube survived our surgery. It lives! Of course, there's nothing bootable on that SSD, so let me dig out the restore disk for this. This thing actually did come with the original restore disks, which is pretty cool, although this only restores system 9.0.4. So I think we'll install this and maybe install macOS 10 alongside it. Let's see. All right, well, CD-ROM drive seems to be just a bit finicky. Eat it. You can do it. Aha. All right, decided to go with macOS 9.2.1 since I happen to have the CD lying around. And we will initialize our SSD with 2 partitions. I want a small one for macOS 9 and then the rest of the disk for OS 10. That's bigger than 64 gigs. All right, 2 completely random sizes. We'll install macOS 9 to the smaller of the 2 partitions. I'm also curious if installing this and taxing the CPU might ferret out any heat issues. Alright, installation complete. Now let's install macOS 10.4 Tiger on the larger partition. Give me that disk. Oh yeah, booted into macOS 9.2.1. Let's stick the Tiger install DVD in there. Rebuilding desktop file. Stop that. I don't need no desktop file. Alright, let's do it. Oh yeah, booting into macOS 10. Yeah, I think this cube is just fine now. I haven't seen even a hint of a problem, he says confidently. Okay, well, ran into a bit of a snag. I completely forgot that these old Power Macs sometimes have issues with hard drives bigger than 128 gigs, and this is like 130. Let's try a different SSD. And there we go! The G4 Cube, once thought to be dead, lives! And has a surprise CPU accelerator in it, which I am freaking excited for. Did not expect that. But now the question is, what can you do with this thing? And that's also a bit of an issue. This G4 Cube was limited back in its day, and it's even more limited today. It maxes out at 1.5 gigs of RAM. The CPU upgrades are extremely difficult to find. We got very lucky here, otherwise this would top out at 550 megahertz. The biggest issue for using this thing though is the graphics card. We have that Rage 128 in here and it has the connector for this display, but it's extremely difficult to upgrade it to anything else. I mean, first of all, it's kind of a weird form factor. A normal video card with this kind of bracket just won't fit. It has to be a bespoke bracket just for this thing. There are 3D printable versions that you can get, but then you also have to get a compatible video card or brute force one into compatibility by chopping off some of the pins. We have done that in the past. I'll link to that video down below, but I don't think I'm going to do that again. If you're thinking about trying to use this as a modern computer, you will be very disappointed in the web browser, which can't really connect to anything because of SSL security. Although insecure sites like FrogFind work just fine. You also used to be able to upgrade these from Apple's servers. I don't know if you're still able to. Let's find out. Oh yeah, look at that! All these years later, Apple still has their PowerPC update servers online, so we can at least update this thing. At least up to a 2004 operating system. Yeah, what an absolutely killer find. I cannot believe there is a 1.3 gigahertz CPU upgrade in there. So now the question is, what am I going to do with this thing? This is actually my 4th G4 Cube. I have 3 other ones. One of them is a bit dead at the moment. We tried to upgrade it to a dual CPU and it exploded. But this might be a fun test bed for certain Linuxy things and other alternative operating systems. We have tried MorphOS on this channel before. That runs great on a G4 Cube. But what do you think? What should we do with this G4 Cube? Don't say Gen 2, because I might just do it. In any event, that'll do it for today's video, and as always, thank you very much for watching. And I just want to give a very special thank you to all of my Patreon supporters and channel members. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for supporting me and supporting this channel and all the weird stuff I do. I am so very grateful, and I just could not do this without you.